What up, y'all? It's your hometown hero, the real Adam Coleman, and you riding with Tru-ID Apologetics. And look, I done told y'all, man, the claim that Christianity is the white man's religion is straight trash. And the more we research the subject, the more evidence that we find that cuts that claim to shreds. Now look, one of the most common claims among the Christianity is the white man's religion crowd is the notion that prior to the Transatlantic Slave Trade, Africans had no dealings with Christianity. And it's not uncommon to see popular YouTube pseudo-scholars and memeologists who believe that nonsense and post memes like this one here as they try to drive home the claim that it was through slavery that Africans were first exposed to and converted to Christianity. Now, people will try to raise this point in a number of different ways.
It's just weird to me because the same people that gave you Jesus gave you nigga. And
they didn't give me Jesus. Not if God created the earth. What? So you're saying to me all of God started at slavery with a white man?
No, that's exactly what I'm not saying. I'm saying that we had something we believed in before we were slaves and were taught this religion. We believed in something before that. Like that, the part of the world we lived in that didn't exist.
Forward. And that's why I said the most destructive thing that's ever taken place in the black community has been the religions that's always introduced to us. And if you ask people the million-dollar question, what were you doing before you were enslaved? What was you studying? And I don't
like we just saw, sometimes people will outright assert that Africans were not exposed to and or didn't rock with Christianity before slavery. Other times people will use a rhetorical question like, what did our ancestors believe before slavery? Or what did Africans practice before slavery in order to kind of make their point? Basically implying that given our ancestors supposedly didn't rock with Christianity before slavery, neither should we. Rather, we should believe, worship, practice, or subscribe to whatever our ancestors did or something along those lines. Now, in either case, the argument being made is that Christianity is something that is culturally or ethnically foreign to African peoples, and on that basis should be rejected. Basically, the notion is that some sort of ethnic betrayal of one's African ancestry or heritage, or like bowing the knee to white supremacy to be black and Christian. Now, right here on this channel, we've demonstrated time and time again that Christianity in Africa goes back to like the 1st century and then centuries following that in places like Egypt, Tunisia, North Africa, Ethiopia, ancient Nubia, which is, modern day Sudan, and so on. But for some folks, that just ain't good enough. Their pushback would be something like, well, that's East Africa or North Africa, and our ancestors came from West Africa. So then we give them more facts. We show them the evidence of the Congo embracing Christianity on various levels in 1491. This occurred under the rule of King Afonso as the Congo came into contact and trade relationship with Portugal. But then folks still want to push back and to say, okay, well, there's your evidence of African enslaved persons exposed to Christianity before being slaves, but that came about due to their interactions with Europeans, the Portuguese, who obviously participated in the slave trade. So, that doesn't really count. All right, so I'm going to give y'all an important piece of the puzzle in terms of answering Brother Polight's million-dollar question. Now, the fact of the matter is West Africans were not monolithic. They didn't all believe and practice the same thing. Now, of course, while bashing Christianity, folks will at the same time align themselves with various religions, spiritual systems, or ideologies that they believe to be in line with what our African ancestors practiced, whether it be Islam, Kemetic spirituality, various forms of African spirituality like Vodun and so on. And of course, the Hebrew Israelites would want to claim that you've got some sort of old covenant worship of Yahweh, being practiced in West Africa before the transatlantic slave trade. But without fail, Christianity is always left out of that loop. However, I'm about to hit y'all with something my dude, Dr. Vince Bantu, just put us onto a couple weeks ago. So shout out to him for this one. What if I told you there was a community of African Christians in West Africa a century or more before the arrival of Europeans and the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade? Well, that was exactly the case. And we got receipts to back it up. All right, let me take you back to a West African kingdom called Mali. Mali was a landlocked West African nation just southwest of Algeria, just to put it in perspective of where we are on the map. And during the period of time we're interested in here, Mali was ruled by a famous African king named Mansa Musa. Now, Mansa Musa was a Muslim ruler and is probably most known for the fact that the man had mad money, like lots of money. It's speculated he may have been the richest king to ever live. Now, in this book that I just happen to have right here, titled Corpus of Arabic Sources for West African History, edited by Levtzion and Hopkins, on pages 250 and 251, we have a translation of a primary source describing what happened during a trip that Mansa Musa took to Egypt. This entry into the book is attributed to Ibn al-Dawardari and is dated to have been written in the early 1300s around 1335 CE. In a portion of his work, Al-Dawadari documents a man that he describes as the inspector of the army named Al-Din, speaking on a conversation that he had with Mansa Musa. Al-Din reports of the conversation like this. He says, quote, "I asked the king of Takur, how is the description of the place where the gold grows with you?" And he replied, "It is not in that part of our land which belongs to the Muslims, but in the land of the Christians of the Takur. We dispatch collectors to take from them a species of the tribute due to us and obligatory upon them. These are special lands, which put forth gold in this fashion, and it consists of small pieces of varying sizes, some like little rings, some like carob seeds, and the like." And then further, it's recorded that Al-Din responded to Mansa Musa by asking, quote, "Why don't you take this land by conquest?" To which Mansa Musa replied, "If we conquer them and take it, it does not put forth anything. We have done this in many ways, but seen nothing there. But when it returns to them, it puts forth as usual." End quote. Now, first of all, I think it's pretty funny, actually, when the Muslim king Mansa Musa attempted to take the land from the Christians to get the gold, they would come up empty-handed. But when it was returned to the Christians, gold was present. I mean, who knows what was going on in that situation, but one way or another, one could look at it like, yo, God was really looking out for that Christian community. By the way, if you haven't made yourself a part of our Tru-ID community yet, make sure you like this video, share it, and subscribe to this channel. And also be sure to subscribe to my Tru-ID gaming channel. That's where we mix in gaming with apologetics discussions and Q&A and all that, and we have a good time. But anyway, here's the point that I wanted to get at. Again, the source of this conversation between Al-Din and Mansa Musa is dated to have been written down in 1335 CE. The general understanding is that the transatlantic slave trade didn't begin until the early 1500s and maybe about mid to late 1400s, depending on how you want to interpret certain events, leading to the full-blown slave trade. But with that being the case, either way, what we have here is evidence of one of Africa's most famous kings, Mansa Musa, referring to a community of indigenous African Christians living in West Africa in the Kingdom of Mali for well over a century before Europeans arrived on the west side of Africa and before the transatlantic slave trade popped off. So when people try to drive an ethnic or cultural wedge between Christianity and Africa by asking rhetorical questions like, what did Africans worship before slavery? Did Africans know anything about Jesus before slavery? If our African ancestors had no dealings with Jesus or Christianity, then why should we? Each of these questions is based upon the false assumption that Christianity was foreign to West Africa before white folks showed up. The reality is Christianity was one of the various religions or spiritual systems practiced by indigenous people in West Africa before slavery. In other words, even before the transatlantic slave trade, Christianity was a part of the spiritual landscape of West Africa, if you will. That's just fire right there. So anyway, if you want to learn more about Christianity in Africa before the transatlantic slave trade, we've got plenty of content right here on this channel. As a matter of fact, you can click on the video beside me and check out our interview with Dr. Vince Bantu on early African Christianity. And also be sure to check out our other content that I've got on the surprising dynamic between Christianity and African enslaved persons. Some history you probably haven't heard before, so you definitely want to check that out. But anyway, y'all know what it is, man. Love God, love people. Take care of the things that God blesses you with. Peace.